one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Glassbon?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand? Here. Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mr. Bob Jones?
Here.
Mr. Tony Jones? Mrs. Schott? And Joseph Bento.
Thank you. And call the calendar.
On Tuesday, June 25th, there will be a school committee business meeting.
Thank you. Next, we have a presentation on the RISS survey. So I will.
Kathy Yeager and Robin Monaco.
Hello, thank you, and welcome.
NK Coalition.
Oh, thank you. You're the person to go to if I mess
yeah,
anything
okay.
up here. Hello. Good evening. I'm Kathy Yeager, the coordinator of the North Kingstown Prevention Coalition. Here with me tonight is Robin Monica. She's the project coordinator on our drug-free community grant. And Ashley Idavaya. She is the project coordinator on a new North Kingstown 5-year grant called Partnership for Success. I want to thank you guys for having us here and giving us the opportunity to present the results of the 2018 Rhode Island Student Survey we kind of call the RIS. And besides presenting the current data that we have, we're also here tonight to ask Dr. Auger and you, the school committee, for approval to participate in the RIS again in 2020. Participation is important to us, not only for continued funding, but to make decisions on what initiatives to use to prevent substance use and misuse among youth. So we just want to thank you for your consideration on this request. The coalition has formally been around since 1987. At that time, municipal substance abuse prevention task forces, as we were called, was established and funded through Rhode Island Department of Behavioral Health. Behavioral health still continues to be the primary funding source for coalitions in Rhode Island. About 3 years ago, prevention coalitions moved to a regional model. This change, and so now we're part of the South County Prevention Coalition. This change has allowed us to pool our resources and coordinate initiatives across South County, making us more efficient and effective. So our coalition, the North Kingstown Coalition, meets regularly to discuss the issues of substance abuse that impact our community and the people that live here. We work together with our community partners to promote behavioral health across the lifespan. And the school department is one of our longest and key community partners and has been so over the past 30 years, or over 30 years, which is really a wonderful thing. And 12 years ago, I just want to kind of set the stage for the numbers that we're going to be looking at shortly. 12 years ago, North Kingstown received a state incentive grant. The grant was need-based, and we received this grant because North Kingstown was ranked 5th in the state for underage drinking. In 2007, 51% of our North Kingstown high school students had reported past 30-day use of alcohol. Tobacco was around 23%, and illegal drugs were 34%. At that time, all illegal drugs were lumped together and not sort of separated out for like marijuana or prescription drugs or other illicit drugs. It was just all illegal drugs. Since then, we've brought that number down significantly. Sufficient funding over the past 12 years from a 3-year state incentive grant and a 10-year drug-free community grant have been instrumental in making that possible. So based on the results of the 2018 RIS, I'd like to show you where we are today. So the survey was taken between February and March of 2018 throughout the state. It measures the risk and prevalence of substance use. Grades 6 through 12 were surveyed throughout the state, with 22,294 total students that participated. Uh-oh. I have to go. Where's my pen? Will you do it? I'm not sure if I could tap as good as Dr. Auger.
No.
Gotta go backwards.
Just one, I think. Oh, I can use this key. Oh my gosh, thank you. Which key was it?
The Eric.
Any of them? Oh, this one backward.
Yeah,
Okay.
forwards and backwards.
Well, hopefully I can figure that out for you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So, anyways, in North Kingstown, 1,141 students participated, and we surveyed grades 8th through 11. All right, let's see. There. Okay. Goes down there. So in prevention, one of the things that we like to look at is past 30-day use. And I also want you might be wondering, because the state surveyed more grades than we did, that this data is based on comparing the same grades. So the high school data for the state that we're looking at is grades 9, 10, and 11, and North Kingstown surveyed grades 9, 10, and 11. So it's not looking at different, it's a good comparison. So for alcohol, past 30-day use, 13.3% was the state average, and in for the North Kingstown High School, we were at 14%, which is fairly close. So, you know, I think that's, and then you remember back in 2007, we were at 51% for alcohol. So
Wow.
quite a huge change over it's been a lot of years, but we've significantly reduced those numbers. And this is lower than it was last year. I think it was 18% last year. Nope. Yes. No, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how it was 24% and on the 2016 list. I'm not really sure. We didn't have a huge participation in 2016, so I'm not sure if we can really use those numbers when we're looking at comparing the two different times that the students have taken the survey. With the middle school, this is just the 8th grade. The state average was 4.8% for alcohol past 30-day use, and both of our middle schools were lower than the state average. Wickford was 1.4, and Davisville Middle was 3%. Let's see. Next, we're looking at past 30-day use of marijuana. The state average was 15%, and in North Kingstown for the high school, we were down a little bit, kind of close, 14.4%, so it was pretty similar. For the middle school, the 8th grade, 4.1% for marijuana use, and at Wickford, we were below the state average, and for Davisville, a little bit higher than the state average. For tobacco past 30-day use, the state average was 2.7, and at the high school, we had 4%. Not really sure why it's higher. It's slightly higher. It's not hugely higher, and again, it's much lower than, I think last year, or not last year, but 2 years ago, for 2016, we were at 4%. I mean, at 5%. So it seems to be a little bit lower than it was last year for us. We wonder if vaping might have some influence over an increased tobacco use that might be different than the state average. Kids that vape might be more inclined to smoke cigarettes. And at the middle school, you can't really get much better than 0, I guess. 1% was the state average, and both of our middle schools had no one that reported tobacco use. The non-medical prescription drug use, past 30-day use, the state average was 2.4, and the North Kingstown High School average was slightly higher at 3%. And at the middle school, the state average was 1.6, and Wickford Middle School and Davisville Middle School were slightly lower than the state average. Now we're looking at e-cigarettes, which has become a huge issue for our young people and use. As you can see, the numbers for Wickford Middle School are around 2.9%. At DMS, it was a much more of an increase of 11.2%. But I think of a big concern is the jump that happens between, 9th grade and 10th grade. I think this is something that we're working on. When this survey was done in 2018, one of the most popular e-cigarettes, Juul, wasn't even on our radar. Hard to believe, but it just wasn't. In 2017, when they put together the survey, it wasn't on the radar. Probably when they took the survey, it might have been, starting to get onto the, for the kids. So this is something that, it's a great opportunity for us to work on, possibly get some kind of a curriculum that could be used in the schools. I know CVS has a curriculum called Catch My Breath. We had a training on that back in March, I think it was, and staff from the high school and both middle schools attended. It's free, and I think that they might try to be implementing that in the schools as much as they can. We also work very closely with Tobacco Free Rhode Island, and they have recently put together a model policy around e-cigarettes that schools can adopt, so that's out there as well. So there are some things that we can work on, are working on. Davisville Middle School has been very instrumental in trying to do some things around the e-cigarette use at the school. They're aware of kids using e-cigarettes. They brought in a speaker, David Neal from the U.S. Attorney's Office, just this past spring, to talk to the students, both 7th and 8th grade, about the history of tobacco and comparing that to what's happening with vapes. And I wasn't able to attend, but Robin was, and it was very well received. And so we're trying to do things, and we're also trying to partner with, overall, we're trying to continue to address these issues that we, of substance use for youth. We're partnering with Office of Family Learning and the new community outreach worker, Chantel Abbott, and we're trying to bring in different things for parents in the Davisville area, resources, provides, raise awareness and provide some education around these issues. So, all right, so let's see. The other thing that we're looking at is the age of first use. This is different than 30-day use. This is ever in your lifetime, have you had a drink of alcohol, of an alcohol beverage, not a sip or two. The good news is about 71% of our students reported never trying alcohol, which is really fabulous, But the not so good news is that most students had their first drink before the age of 16. Oh, I need to go back. Age of first use for marijuana, sort of a similar thing as alcohol. About 80% of students reported never trying, which is really good news. But the same thing as if they ever tried it, the majority tried marijuana before the age of 16. And our last slide is on mental health. Our students health and well-being is very important to all of us. This question was asked during the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide? And 13% of our students said that they did. This is encompassing 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. I think the fact that we have student assistance counselors in both middle schools and the high school is a real protective factor. They deal with all of these issues. We work closely with them. I think I'd like to just, I really think that the survey, we can kind of feel good about these results. The numbers are low, especially compared to like 9 years ago. And the coalition is going to see this as an opportunity to raise awareness and provide resources and work with our community partners to find ways to prevent youth drug use and improve our students' health and well-being. So, in closing, I want to say we greatly appreciate the school department's support of our prevention efforts now and over the years. We hope that North Kingstown School Department will choose to participate in the 2020 RIS. And we just want to thank you for consideration on this. I'm sure you have questions. I'm not sure that I can answer them all, but I would certainly be happy to take your questions. If I can't answer them, try to get to the right people to find the answers for you.
I have a question.
Sure.
On the mental health, the question about the suicide, our results being at 13%, do you know what the state was on that?
No, I'm not sure that they did a comparison with the state on that particular one, but I can find out. We can certainly check on
I
that.
looked up this question on the national, 16% nationally.
Thank you for
15
doing
or
that.
16?
Yeah, 16%.
I'm going to come to you before I present next time. No, but that we were wondering about some of the national statistics
Well,
around a lot of this stuff, and thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I think one of my concerns on this, well, first of all, thank you for all the work you do, because it is really important work in educating our kids and trying to get out in terms of prevention stuff. I guess one of my concerns is anytime we reach down and ask, this is a whole almost 30-something minutes of school time,
Yeah.
is to say, well, what's the value we're getting at? So you're showing us some stuff that I think is valuable, but there's whole chunks of the survey here that I don't know if you don't get the results, but I find interesting that if we're going to ask, for example, there's whole sections about the school. Have you been bullied?
Mm-hmm.
Do you not feel something, right? Certain how you feel. And to get the cross-correlation of going, well, 13% of students thought about committing suicide. Well, are they also the ones who said they were bullied? Are they also the ones who reported, their grades being low? Are they the ones who reported that, recognition or what, I forget the exact question,
Yeah.
but home life questions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To me, if you're not, I don't mean you and the you.
No, I know.
But if the state's not going to help us to say, it's one thing to say 13% of your students thought about suicide. Well, there's a couple other questions too in that thing. It's also helpful to know, what districts participated. So is it North Kingstown and Providence, or is it North Kingstown and Barrington and East Greenwich, right?
Yes.
What are the demographics of the students? Is this, 55% female, right? Without knowing some of these statistics, to me, questions some of the validity, which I think clouds some of the points that you're trying to make,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
So there's something that happens between 9th and 10th grade on e-cigarettes. Well, how is that correlated to some of the other questions? Do you also see a rise in, some of the other parts? The questions about school atmosphere. Is there a noticeable difference in that between 9th and 10th graders, right? I just feel if you're going to ask our students to give you all these questions, and there's whole chunks that either you're ignoring or we're not getting the data, then either why are you asking it, or why are we participating?
Yeah. Well, I wish I could answer all of those questions. This is just my thought.
Well, someone
Of
must
what
be getting this data,
Yeah, there must be.
right?
Right. So I think that this presentation, we tried to just do just what you were saying. These are some of the points that we thought might be most important for you to know. But we could certainly ask to
Well, I
delve
think
deeper
we have
and
a
get.
right, if we're asking
Yeah.
our students to do the thing, the district has a right to get its full data set back.
So what you got before was that raw data really wasn't what you were
No.
looking for.
No, it was
Yeah.
just a snippet of this data.
That was just a snippet
Not
of
to
the day.
grab Mr. Jones, but I've worked with him for a long time and know what Mr. Jones likes to do. He's looking for some data that he can plug into his computer, run through his spreadsheet, and do correlations. Because as he just described, there are, if the administration and even us have the ability to see the raw data, not summaries. Everything we've gotten so far have been summaries. The actual, and
Right.
we understand that they're not correlating to individuals. Obviously they're anonymous,
Yeah.
but yet you can
Sure.
run a report to say, like, you gave a great example. What's the correlation between students who felt bullied compared to those who said that they've had suicidal
Absolutely.
thoughts?
Right.
And, obviously we know that bullying is something that we need to address, but those kinds of correlations can help you target the programs a little better.
Yes.
And I don't know if there's any way that you know of to get us that, the raw data set that we can work with.
I understand that through the director for South County, Heidi Driscoll, that you were in conversation or an email with Elizabeth Farrow.
I was, it's just
And-
about the.
and you were
point.
not
You're
able
asking-
to-
You're asking, 10-year-olds about their sexual orientation.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, I think it's inappropriate because there's nothing in here that tells me that knowing that answer to that question correlates with some of the other findings. I think it would be more appropriate to ask, if they know their family, do you get free and reduced lunch? Like that, I think maybe is a correlation with e-cigarettes. I don't know, but I think it's more appropriate than asking some of those questions. But if
Yeah.
you're gonna ask the question, please tell me how that's informing then the results to help us allocate, and you all, to
Yeah.
allocate the scarce resources, because we know we don't have enough funding
Yes.
for everything we want to do in this area. So I guess I'm just frustrated going, if this is partnered with URI, there should be some control mechanism to say, if you're asking sensitive questions to minors, I understand there's a consent form, like there should be, but someone should be really validating these questions that's outside of the people in the Department of Health and all that, because sometimes you get too close to your questions. And you're like, everybody, I think everyone knows this, like, I'd like to know this, and I'd like to know, wouldn't this be nice to know? And at some point, you lose the point, which is, you're focusing us on, alcohol, substance abuse, which I think is appropriate, then why ask all these other questions? Especially if you're not gonna share with us the data to do some of the things as mentioned. And there's a whole point in 2018, there was the ATI campaign. Was that successful? There was a whole bunch of questions
Yes,
asked
there
about
were.
it. That'd be interesting for us to know, going, you spent time
Yep.
to do this campaign with our students, did it show any results? I'd like to know that.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'd just like to say it'd be nice, I understand if funding's tied to this, I'm not gonna, hold up on this, but we would like to get our data back.
Okay. We will ask. And I think you've already probably asked, I'm not sure, but,
I'll work with you on that.
yeah, we'll work together on that and see what we
I
can
don't
find
know
out.
how much of it administration in the district gets back. I'd like to know, Kim Carson's not here tonight, but I'd like to know how much of this she hears about and our district
Yeah.
social workers and, those folks. I'm sure they deal with a lot of data. I don't know about this specific survey, but
One other question, for the
Sure.
2020 survey, what grades would you be giving it to in North Kingstown?
The same grades as
So
before.
8 to 11 again? Because I remember your question on the sexual orientation came up last time.
Well,
Yeah. Yes, it did. I remember that too.
One of the reasons that, I was comfortable with it, we deliver the survey to 8 through 11, so you're dealing with, older kids.
Right.
In North
Well, I was really uncomfortable with that. I'm glad they got rid of the question asking about how you dress.
No, I think it's.
That was a horrible question, I think. you know, and I'm glad they got rid of it for this one, but again,
Yeah, and I don't know if you
that
recall,
was on the 2018.
was it on the 2018?
Oh, I see.
Yes,
That's the final
yes, it
one.
was. And I think my recollection was that with the gender question, there was student feedback and kids wanted it to be able to self-identify. It wasn't something that adults decided, it was something.
I think we're on the same
yeah,
page, that
yeah.
with the age group that we're
Okay.
dealing with in North
Okay.
Kingstown, starting with grade 8 delivering this
Yeah.
survey, I am comfortable with it
Okay.
there, but when you
Good.
drop it down lower,
Yeah,
and you have question number 5, which says, which of the following best describes you, heterosexual, gay, or lesbian, bisexual, not sure,
yeah,
you reach an age group where not sure is the answer because they have no idea what
Right.
you're asking.
that's true.
And I just want to make sure that, you know, we're asking age
Well, but
appropriate
also
questions.
last year, for some reason, there was one response by a 6th grader, so
Somewhere it.
somewhere. it
But
got
not here,
kind
which
of-
is what I'm,
No, somewhere in North Kingstown.
Oh.
Because I got our thing back, so.
Yeah, and I don't know how that happens
Right.
either, unless
That's
they
my
happen to
concern,
be
too.
in that.
but what if someone
Great.
filled in the wrong bubble, could that?
Could be.
Oh,
you know.
that could be.
How old,
too.
because there's a bubble, what grade are you in?
Yeah.
If some kid filled in 6th, that's what's gonna happen.
I mean, we had some 12th
Well, I know,
graders
but
answering
if-
questions too.
You know, again, like,
We don't
if you
know.
look at like SurveyWorks data
Yeah,
for the high school, about a quarter of the students filled in that they're transgender. So 60,000 responses, and now to me, I think that's just students being
Mm.
flippant about answering a survey,
could be.
right?
Mm.
But again, it sort of speaks to if you're flippant about the first couple questions,
How
how
valid is
serious
the
are
rest?
you
Right.
on, you know, question 50, right? So I just think, again, that I think the survey's too long personally, but it is what it is at this point. But I would like to see, again, that we can get some data at the district level to inform our people to go, it's not just the trend that it's up or down, or there's some
Mhm.
use or not use, it's up between 9th and 10th grade, and all the other questions. The other thing for the community is there's 3 questions about your neighborhood and the
Yep.
police.
Yes.
I don't know, I think the town manager might like to know that question if, you know, 100% of our students are saying in my neighborhood, we don't worry about the police ever, you know, coming in. So,
Yeah,
again,
no,
it's a community,
these are all
there's
valid
stuff for the community.
asks. And, you know, I think this is like the second year that this is rolled out in 2018. So, you know, we'll pass on this information. Maybe, hopefully, there'll be some changes and improvements. I think, you know, it might have been that we were thinking this might be what schools wanted to know, you know, but you want to know more. And
We want to know what you told us, we just want to know more.
you want to know more, yeah. And I like to hear all that information
Yeah.
too. It's-
And the summary was excellent, I mean, I'm not, you hit
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Absolutely, it's just, we would love to dive a lot deeper.
yeah. Even if it wasn't in a presentation, but
No,
that you
yes,
had the
we-
data to
we-
look at.
I don't
yeah.
think anyone here wants a 5-hour presentation with that level of detail.
Yeah.
Just the ability to, you know, to
Yeah.
try to run certain correlations that might be useful to us.
Absolutely. So I'll pass that on to the South County and the state, and we'll try to get you any requests that you ask.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
very
much.
much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming, and thank you for the
Thank
presentation.
you very much.
Yeah, we can do that. Any objection
Oh.
from the members to moving item, where are we? I had it circled a second ago. Item H up for consideration at this time, which is the approval of the survey for the 2020. Okay, with unanimous consent, if I could have a motion to approve item H.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins, a second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? I think we had most of our discussion a moment ago. And all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously, so thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you.
And I just forgot to mention that Robin had passed around a little handout. This is something that we put together for our upcoming coalition meeting, which is Thursday. But it's kind of like what we did, you know, the year in review.
Sure.
And we thought it would be nice to share with you guys so you could see kind of. We're surprised about all the stuff we did this year, but and it's not even all on there, but we thought it would be nice to share with you as well.
Thank you
So
very
thank
much for
you.
all the work you do.
Very,
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other recognitions, Dr. Humbert?
Yes, I have 3 recognitions. First is Sandra Mikulski, who is a 7th grade social studies teacher at Davisville Middle School, has won the Veterans of Foreign Wars Teacher of the Year for middle level. She was presented with this award at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Award ceremony at the end of May at the Radisson Hotel in Warwick. Also at DMS, the 7th grade math teacher Michaela Shalvoy received the RIMLE, which is the Rhode Island Middle Level Educators Association, the Promising Practitioner Award. So this is an award that's given to a new teacher. And I had the honor of speaking with her today, and she's just a great asset to the district. And she was her name was submitted by the principal of DMS. And then the last one is as top raters in the class of 2020, Laura McIntosh, Alina Rutherford, and Tate Kent entered this year's writing competition sponsored by the National Council of Teachers of English, and that's offered to juniors all across the country, high school juniors. Over 400 students in the U.S. entered the competition, and both Elena and Tate received awards of superior writing. Only 5 other NKHS students have received superior ranking over the past 20 years. That's it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, big honor.
Thank you very much. So next item on our agenda are citizens' comments. I have one person who signed up, Braden Blanchett. And if you could just, you can pull that down a little bit. Yep, absolutely. And if you could just state your name and your address for the record, please. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Brandon Blanchett, and my address is 122 Railroad Avenue, Saunderstown, Rhode Island. And it's 02874 is my area code. And, okay, so, hello, my name is Brandon Blanchett, and I am currently a 6th grader at Wickford Middle School. I am here today because it has come to my attention that SHOP is often dropped as a class and may no longer be offered as a class for next year. When I heard about this, I decided to interview my SHOP teacher, Mr. Buzz, about why we should keep SHOP, and these are my results. Mr. Buzz told me that he changed the name of the course to Applied Learning because many of the things that we learn upstairs in our math and science classes are applied down in the SHOP room. SHOP is a useful skill to have in life because it is good to know how to work with your hands, especially in a career as an engineer, in the trades, and even a surgeon. One of the main reasons that SHOP is being taken away is because people believe that technology and robotics is our future. But SHOP is the beginning of an engineer's career, and engineering is the source of advancing in technology and robotics. Also, SHOP gives kids the freedom of design and creativity, which again is part of the start of a career of robotic design. For the kids at school, it would just be a boring day without SHOP because it is just very fun. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight, and I hope to see SHOP as a class I could take next year and for the next generation of engineers begin their career in middle school. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well said.
You did a great job.
Thanks.
You do. So the next item on our agenda is our superintendent's report. Dr. Auger is going to present on the North Kingstown School Department's long-term infrastructure plan.
I'm over here, get a better view here. This, I don't know if I'm blocking your view here or not, but. So, good evening, everyone. You know, this has been, this proposal I'm going to make to you tonight is about the long-term future of the school department. It has been a part of our discussion as a school committee for a few years now. At different meetings, we've talked about the need to really think about our long-term infrastructure, trying to get to newer and fewer in terms of our schools, talking about our office space, and really taking our planning to more than, what are we doing for the fiscal year 2020 to what are we thinking 10 and 20 years out from now, and how are we going to make sure that we are set up in the optimal place. So I put together this proposal. This is a proposal that comes from me personally to the school committee, and then it's a matter of the school committee taking it from there. I have certainly consulted with a number of school committee members as well as other people in the community about some of these ideas, but I'm taking full ownership of them tonight, and I realize that this is going to be the beginning of a lengthy process of discussions that involve the school committee, the town council, the community at large, the Department of Education, and other folks along the way. And this could be a matter of several years as we make decisions on this, and certainly if it involves construction, several years further than that. So, so this is a long-term plan looking at the future. And I just want to quote, this is one of my favorite pictures of the North Kingstown School Department. You never really fully understand how close this school is to the bay until you see it from this vantage point. This picture was taken just after North Kingstown High School was built. And you can see that they had just seeded the grass area over here. It wasn't fully green yet. I don't know if they had drones back then, but probably a helicopter took that shot. But it was certainly a great shot. And somewhere in the distance over here, I believe that is Hamilton Elementary somewhere. I think that might be it. So, so there's more than one school in that picture, so it's kind of the perfect picture to get this moving. So I set up this in terms of a few goals. The first is long-term sustainability, to maintain our school department buildings with a vision toward long-term sustainability. Planning with the long-term in mind will benefit generations of students and taxpayers as well, if we're planning now and not always kind of reacting to problems as they occur. That can only lead to good things. So we want to use our infrastructure effectively and efficiently. It's important for the school department to envision a newer and fewer. That's a term that comes from the governor in her offers to, in the legislature in terms of, the funding that they're providing to districts for these kinds of projects. One in which we can see more modern efficiencies for our school buildings. There's 2 of our elementary schools right now that exist without a gymnasium. I think we would all agree that it would be optimal that all of our elementary students would have a gymnasium at their elementary school. Our preschool suffices for now, but preschool is an area that is growing. It requires a lot of very particular kinds of furniture and plumbing and so on. So it's a good idea to think long-term for that we should have more capacity for our preschool with this in mind. And, and we have to be ready for increases in student population. With the redistribution that we just went through, the idea of school capacity came up, and the idea of, in any given neighborhood, a school optimally, I would think, would be around the number 80%, where that means if there's all of a sudden a spike in people moving into the neighborhood with school-age children, that they can absorb those children without going over the cap and having to do, another realignment in short term. So I'm trying to put together a combination here that allows for that allows for a nice, comfortable use of each building, and that if there is a spike in any particular neighborhood, we don't know what's going to happen 10 years and 20 years from now, but if there is, we would have a set of buildings that can absorb that. Also, some of the themes of things that we've been looking at over the years are school security issues, school start times has been an issue, the capacities, and equity. So I would want to think, if we're going to go to this major a project, that it's important to seize the opportunity to address these concerns, that our buildings should have the newest and the latest in terms of school security, especially in terms of entryway vestibules. Our buildings are better now than they have been in the past for these kinds of things, but we could certainly do a lot better still. We would also want to redistribute the elementary zoning to bring all schools to an optimal, like 80% enrollment and capacity. we've done a lot on that this past year, but we're still not perfect. We had 2 schools that were well above 90%. Now we're at 1 school that's in the upper 80s, around 90. The rest are upper 70s and the 80s. But we would like to get so that everybody is around that 80% number. That would be the best. And a more equitable distribution of North Kingstown's low-income student population. As you know, a number of parents have come to us over the years and have complained that, Quidnesset has a significantly higher number of free and reduced lunch, students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch than any other school in the district. And that is a cause for concern. And I think that if we do this, this project the right way, we may be able to find a way in there. I know we can find a way in there to, redistribute a lot of the neighborhoods in such a way so that there isn't just one school that is taking that on, that there's more of an equitable distribution. And the research does bear out that one of the best things you can do for a low-income child is to send them to a school with a lot of high-income children. And I think that's one of the benefits of our high school, for instance. And so if there's a way to kind of, do that work with what I'm going to propose tonight, I think it would be worthwhile to take advantage of that. So currently we have 8 schools in North Kingstown: the high school, Davisville Middle, Wickford Middle, 5 elementaries, Hamilton, Fishing Cove, Forest Park, Stony Lane, and Quidnesset. And Fishing Cove also has a preschool that the other schools do not have. We have a clinical day program at Davisville Academy. That's the former Davisville Elementary building. And we have 3 office space locations, one here at Quonset, one at Davisville Academy. One of the wings on that building is special education and the Office of Family Learning. And in our D building, we have our transportation, technology, food service, and buildings and grounds. So those are the buildings currently that make up our configuration. What I am proposing is to go to, instead of 8 schools, we would go to 7 schools. We'd still have Davisville Academy with some room for expansion there because we would move some of the office space from Davisville Academy. The high school would still exist. We would go to a 1 middle school format. That's the big change in this plan more than any other. And that would be North Kingstown Middle School. And I'm proposing that we have that at the Wickford Middle School property. But with a change that this middle school would be a 7 and 8 middle school. It would not be 6, 7, and 8. And the reason for that is just logistics. Right now, there's a capacity for roughly 550 or 600, I think, at Wickford Middle. And the property can hold that when you think of the need for parking and the need for field space in that building. If we go to a 6, 7, and 8 middle school building that houses all of the kids in the district, that would pretty much take up the whole property for the building itself and the parking involved, and you wouldn't have too much room for field space. So I think going to a 7 and 8 model for our middle school could accomplish that and still have plenty of room for the fields that you traditionally expect with a middle school. The 5 elementary schools would now be K-6 because of this. So think that each school would have be a little bit leaner at each grade level, but would go deeper because now they're going K-6 instead of K-5. So, and those 5 schools would now be Stony Lane, Hamilton, Quidnesset, Fishing Cove, and what is currently Davisville Middle School. Bringing an elementary school to Davisville Middle increases our capacity for elementary significantly because the difference between the capacity at Davisville Middle as opposed to the capacity at Forest Park is 350 to 400 students. It's that much. So I don't know if that would stay the same if it changes from a middle school to an elementary. We'd have to have our architects tell us that. But it would still open up a lot of space for our elementary kids. And as I mentioned earlier, that would then expand this zone of kids that are coming to the northern part of town and take some of that heavy enrollment from where, say, Stony Lane, Fishing Cove, and even Hamilton would be kind of drawn up. Some of that population would be drawn up into into Fishing Cove. So there could be a significant redistribution with this going on. The other benefit of having an elementary at Davisville Middle building instead of Forest Park is that Davisville Middle has a gymnasium. Forest Park does not. So with this configuration at Fishing Cove, I'd be looking for a preschool addition of 10 classrooms and meeting space and offices and a gymnasium. So this would be a significant build in this proposal as well. And Davisville Academy would continue to exist, of course, in this plan. So I'm going to go through this step by step with each building. That's I want to thank Rob Silvera for his pictures. I think he took these last year. He picked a really beautiful morning because it's really nice sunshine in all these buildings in a nice spring day. So this is Wickford Middle School. This is a building that would go in this plan, and we would build a new North Kingstown Middle School on the same property. One of the benefits of doing that is that we could build on the front lawn. At the same time, the kids are still attending school at Wickford, so you wouldn't have to redistribute a whole middle school worth of kids while the construction is going on. That's a benefit of doing that. But this would be a capacity, it would be a 7 and 8 school, about 750 student capacity is what I'd be looking for, which is 150 students above our current population for 7th and 8th grade. So 600 out of 750 hits that magic sweet spot of 80%, and so that would be ideal for that in terms of capacity where we exist now. So if there's all of a sudden a spike in certain years of kids in the system and at the middle level, this school would have room to absorb that. It allows for, because you go into 7 and 8 and you don't have a full complement of the 6, 7, and 8 with almost 900 to 1,000 kids, you still have the room for fields and parking that you currently have at that property, and it's central in NK, which allows for if the community accepts this, and this will be a decision for future school committees, but it would allow for busing of the 7 and 8 grade students with high school students. It's not too far from the high school, so one could conceivably see the buses going to the high school and then quickly dropping kids off at Wickford Middle. That would cut one of our tiers in our busing system. Every bus currently makes 4 runs. This would mean every bus would now make 3 runs, and we could condense the busing that way. I mean, a lot of study would need to be done to see exactly how that plays out logistically, but I see that as one of our best opportunities to help with the school start time issue, both with the early high school start time and the late elementary times that we have at a few of our schools. The next school that has a major build on it would be Fishing Cove. Fishing Cove is one of the biggest properties that the school department has, and it has probably the most space for growth. It is what I'd be looking for there is to use the existing 5 classrooms that we have for the elementary school. Remember that we're going to be adding a 6th grade. And Fishing Cove also needs office space in a big way. The principal's office at Fishing Cove is the size of a closet. It is really, really tiny, and there isn't much conference room space. So it's really kind of a shared double closet type of thing that is the conference room for the teachers and for the principal's office. And so that office area needs to be expanded, but also with the expansion of preschool throughout the state, that's going to be hitting NK as well. I think it would be wise to double our number of classrooms for pre-K and to be prepared for that, and to do that in a way that all of our classrooms are specifically made for pre-K classrooms, and that would include a conference room for them and an office. And so that would allow classroom space in the existing building for grade 6. Conference room allows for K through 6, 335 students there. New pre-K up to 150. I think right now we're in 120, 130 for preschool to operate approximately 80% capacity there. And it would add a gymnasium at this school, which it currently does not have, and that would allow for better use of the cafeteria, maybe even an expansion on that cafeteria because it's pretty tiny. At the Davisville Middle School now, as I mentioned, according to this plan, would become the new Davisville Elementary School, which is going to lead to all kinds of confusion because there's another building that used to be Davisville Elementary School. It's going to be called Davisville Academy. So maybe there's another name in mind. I'm not sure. But this would mean a conversion of the infrastructure for a K-6 school, and that capacity of that school would be 680 students. So that would be it's a significant sized building, right, for that middle school. So it would allow us to, really add significant capacity for our elementary needs. It would allow an increase of 405 student capacity over Forest Park Elementary, and you would need some of that because now you're including the 6th grade with the elementaries. So that would definitely help us there. And it already has a gymnasium, so now we would have gymnasiums at all of the 7 schools if you include the addition of one at Fishing Cove. So that, box is checked. So for Forest Park would be looking at either repurposing Forest Park. I see that as a really good option for district offices. It seems, I haven't done an architectural study of that with offices in mind, but it seems like it will be about the right size for the department. We may still need the D building, but we could certainly bring the special education group at Davisville Academy to this building with the current central office that we have here, and repurpose this space, do some fixing up. That the gym and cafetorium that's over there at Forest Park would probably make for a really nice professional conference room, similar to this one here, with a little bit of work, of course. And because of the playground area behind there, we could use that for additional parking, so that when you have those days that there's a big professional development need, a lot of people come into the building, you would have room for the parking needs there as well. And that way it wouldn't be a complete closure of this building. But that's, there are a number of things in here that are options that this school committee, town council, and other school committees and other town councils down the road are going to be a part of making decisions about, and that's one of them. So the other schools in the building, in the program, will continue to exist as they are, but I would propose in all of those cases to look at their major capital needs. Particularly, we know in the next 10 to 15 years we're going to need a new roof at every school. The high school already needs one. We would want to address the security vestibule issue, which, to do that right, and what I mean by that is a space where you can be buzzed in, that there is someone there behind glass or, a security person in a properly set up area that can check your ID, and then you're buzzed in again. Our schools really don't have that kind of format just yet. They have some good features to it. We've gotten a lot better over the years, but I think we would want to move to that level. And also, we know in that period of time that we're going to be looking at resurfacing all of the parking lots in our schools. Many of them need them now. But those are the kinds of things that keep getting put off year after year, and at a certain point you kind of put things together and you have a bond or some kind of special ask to the town council. It never goes over well. So those kinds of projects may want to be included in this, so we kind of do it once and get a lot of headway on these kinds of major projects at all the different schools. So there's the high school, there's Hamilton Elementary School, same kinds of things. Hamilton also needs some fencing and other kinds of things as well, but these would be kind of the major projects there. Stony Lane, again, will need a replacement of a roof. We'll need that security vestibule. It's the same layout as Quidnesset Elementary, which is coming up next. Similar needs at both of those schools. And their capacities will pretty much remain the same, but again, they'd kind of be longer and leaner in the sense that they would go K through 6. So at each of these schools, there'd be fewer kids per grade level, but they would go deeper in the grades up to 6th grade. And what would help us with the K through 6 elementaries is the fact that we're gaining 400 spots in terms of capacity by changing from Forest Park to Davisville Middle as a building. Davisville Academy, that could increase in capacity for the clinical program particularly if we are moving some office space from there to join again with the other part of the central office, as I mentioned with the Forest Park model. The other option for the office space, by the way, is the Fishing Cove property, which I'll talk about in a moment. So, so with elementary K-6 enrollment capacity, currently we are at elementary K through 5, and we have 1,510 kids and a capacity of 1,893, so that's roughly 80%. So over the whole system, we're fine. It varies a little bit from school to school, as you know, but that's where we are. And this, even though we're going to K to 6, because we've added those spaces at Davison Middle, according to this plan, we still say right at 79, right in that zone where you would want to stay for capacity. And we would have the ability at that point to do some significant rezoning to make sure that those numbers land exactly where we want them to land for the long-term purposes. So that way, like I said, a big group of people move into a particular neighborhood or a housing development, and we would know that we have the space to absorb that, and we wouldn't have to go back to a redistricting plan a few years later. It would probably be a decade to 2 decades later before we're talking about that again. The middle school 7 and 8 enrollment capacity right now, 6 through 8, we have 894 students with spots for 1165, so we're roughly at 77%. And both schools, by the way, this came up in the redistricting discussion, both of our schools, Wickford and Middle, even though they have different enrollments, they're both very similar in terms of their ratio to their capacity for their building. So we really didn't feel like we needed to do much in terms of the redistricting with the middle school this time around. They're both right around that 77% number. So the proposed, even though it goes just 7th and 8th grade, if we build that Wickford, property building, the North Kingstown Middle School the right way for 7th and 8th grade, you're really staying in that zone of an 80% capacity. The preschool capacity right now, our students, it's a little tough talking about capacity because a lot of our students attend for half a day for preschool right now. There is a lot of talk of more and more kids attending full day and just more kids attending period with the state planning. And so I think it would be prudent for the district to go to a 10 classroom model instead of 5 classrooms. And that would allow Fishing Cove, those current rooms, to be used for their elementary because they're going to need to go K through 6 instead of K through 5, which would be helpful to them. So I put this together. This is the age of the current buildings. Now, obviously, this is going to change over time as we get deeper into this discussion over the years. And by the time of construction, these numbers are going to be a little out of whack because that could be several years from now. But Fishing Cove is a 62-year-old building. Forest Park is 57. It was built at the same time as Hamilton. Because of growth in the Hamilton area over time, Hamilton has a significant addition and a gymnasium that Forest Park does not have. I'm not exactly sure what year that was put in. I think it was in the late 70s or early 80s or so. Quidnesset and Stony Lane were built in 1971, but again, because of growth in the Stony Lane catchment area, Stony Lane is a little bit bigger building with a few classrooms added on in the back that Quidnesset does not have. But they are 2 of our newer buildings, 1971. That constitutes a new building in North Kingstown. And they're in good shape, and both have gymnasiums which are well. They perform very well, and we like them the way they are. But again, just the ages of those buildings is something that we need to be looking at. With Davisville Middle, 1967. That is one of the more recent ones that we've had work on. Just in this past 6 years or so, we have had a new roof on that building. Wickford Middle is the granddaddy of them all at 87 years old. And by the time we do anything with it, it would be past 90 years for sure. Let's hope it's not beyond 100 years at that point. But it really needs a lot of work. You walk that building, you see a number of things that need to be addressed. And it's kind of like that old clunker car that because it's so old, because they don't make the parts anymore, because of just different conditions in the building, just doing routine maintenance sometimes costs 3 or 4 times what you expect, because now there may be, say, an asbestos remediation project attached to it, or different things come up that make just a routine maintenance on any other building would become a significant and costly project at Wickford Middle. So that is definitely the building that needs to be addressed. Whether that is with a removal or a major, and I mean major project to restore that, if that's the way the school committees and town councils and our voters want to go. The high school is our newest building, and one of the newest high schools in the state of Rhode Island. It's 18 years old, and with the addition of the air conditioning, and hopefully with this proposal, a new roof is really good for a long time to come. And it's a beautiful building. It just needs to be a little cooler on those hot days. So the average age of our schools in 2019 is 53.6 years. If we were to do this and take Forest Park out of the equation and Wickford Middle out of the equation and add a building that is 0 years, your average would then drop to 45.7 years. So that does fit the definition of newer and fewer. And that means something in terms of, hopefully, conditions may change on all this, and there's a lot going on at the State House to be done in not only right now, but in future years. But, that would be something that would help us in terms of points toward getting state reimbursement for some of these projects. So the administrative office space is currently here at Quonset. Superintendent, assistant superintendent, COO, human resources, payroll, benefits, registration are all in this building. At Davisville Academy, we have special education in the Office of Family Learning. And at the D building on Fairway Drive, that is the building behind the town council office area. That used to be a classroom building for the previous high school. And that still houses our transportation, technology, buildings and grounds, and food service. And it also functions as a bomb shelter. And if you've ever been in there and seen it, the walls are about 3 feet thick of concrete. You are safe in that building. And for that reason, it's probably the best place that we can put our technology offices, because that equipment is definitely safe in there. So proposed options, and I do not have any specific proposal here, but there are certainly a number of options here. We can move the Quonset and Davisville Academy offices to Forest Park Elementary. That would mean we need to refurbish Forest Park for office and conference spaces and increase parking. And that project would not be eligible, to my knowledge, and Mrs. King, if you need to weigh in on this when we're discussing about the housing aid piece, because that's key here. So when you're building onto a school, or you're building a new school and you add offices to that space, the offices are also eligible for your housing aid. But if you're closing a school and then repurposing it for offices, you may not be eligible for that housing aid.
Correct,
Isn't that
or if you're
Yes.
adding an addition solely for administrative use, it would not be eligible.
Right. So now, if we were to build North Kingstown School Department district offices to replace Quonset and Davisville Academy as an addition of the North Kingstown Middle School on the Wickford property, that would be eligible for housing aid. We could also be eligible for housing aid if we put the district offices on the Fishing Cove property, because you're building a new preschool wing there, and that would be then an addition onto that addition. And that may be a really nice option, because, as I mentioned, Fishing Cove has a lot of room for expansion. It's a very big property when you see it from a helicopter view, and it has a lot of acreage there that we could build on. So there are all are pretty nice options. Forest Park doesn't get you the housing aid, but it is an existing building, and it seems to be set up in a way that would be beneficial to us. So, all right, I just went one step too far there, so let's go back. Okay, so the benefits of this plan. It's newer and fewer schools. All NK students grades 7 through 12 would attend school together. That's a nice add on this. The the have and have-nots, the, you know, competition of middle schools and that sort of thing, a lot of that would start to go away, obviously. It resets and maximizes enrollment to capacity ratios to allow for growth in all of our neighborhoods and elementary schools. It lengthens the time before another reset would be needed. As I mentioned, if we can get all of these at a nice 80% capacity, I could see that being in place for a good decade, if not a lot further than that. And it allows for a more equitable distribution of NK's low-income population in the elementary schools, which I mentioned earlier. Other benefits. It allows for improved start times at the high school and the late elementaries. It allows for modernizing and efficiencies for heat and transportation costs. It addresses North Kingstown School Department's most significant capital infrastructure needs for a generation, including updating school security features and all needed roof replacements that are going to come around, and those can be very expensive. And it takes advantage of a state housing aid for these high expense projects with increased aid for the newer and fewer state incentive that is already out there. I had one more slide on here, but it didn't make it to this particular, it wasn't on the one. So the other slide that I will send to you basically is on the theme of what happens if we don't do this, or if we don't do something similar to this. And I think that's a real important discussion to be had. If we decide, you know what, this is, any version of this is just too much for us to take on, and we prefer not to, that doesn't mean that Wakeford Middle School gets any younger. It would mean that one way or another we would have to put a lot of money into that school to address its needs going forward. It would also mean we still have 2 elementary schools that do not have a gymnasium. That would be an important point to consider. It would also mean that we could be looking at significant preschool expansion with really no place, at least at Fishing Cove, to take that on without, you know, doing another redistribution of our students around the district, which I don't think people would want to do. So while this certainly, it would seem to me, would be, given all the projects at the different schools, would be something in the neighborhood of, you know, $100 million, you would think, that I think that's money well invested and could realize a lot of savings in other areas over the years, and just make sure that we have modern buildings for our kids, well-heated buildings for our kids, buildings that we're not worried about falling down around us, and not having to put a burden on future school committees about, you know, well, this is breaking down over here and this is breaking down over there, and we have limited funds to address these things. So it would take care of a lot of this for a long time, and that would be, I think, beneficial to whether you're a taxpayer in town or whether you're a parent thinking of sending your kids to North Kingstown Public Schools. So I've spoken plenty. I don't know if there are any questions or comments.
Any questions? Well, thank you for the presentation.
I have some questions.
Okay. Just to point out that, as Dr. Jay mentioned at the beginning, this is his presentation to us. It is not a fully developed and completed architecturally engineered plan. We have to start somewhere. So it is up to the school committee to decide what we want to do going forward. And it is a, you know, as it says right there, long-term plan. None of this is going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of time and work to decide exactly how we want to proceed, start working on things, and then moving forward.
So along that theme, I think the next step, and I think it can be handled by consensus tonight, is to charge us to get just an estimate from our architect about what a study of this would, you know, a range in terms of how many hundreds of thousands of dollars would you need to pay a firm to give you back a study of all of these ideas and, you know, details as to what they really mean. You know, are we talking about $100 million, or are we talking, you know, just in South Kingstown they had to cancel some plans because they were thinking in terms of you know, $80 to $100 million, and it turned out that their high school they were looking to build was $150 million as an estimate. So that would be something that would put the brakes on in a hurry.
but this would be just an estimate for writing the plan. So if Mr. Partridge comes back to us and says, for something this ambitious, you're probably looking at, say, $300,000 to pay a firm to get back to you in, say, 6 months with what all this would look like and what it would mean. I think it would be definitely be important to engage with the town council and to see if amongst the school committee and the town council there's an interest. That, you know, it's probably going to involve votes from future town councils and future school committees along the way, but at least for these two groups to say, we want to at least spend that initial investment to see what this is going to look like, and then we can make future decisions from there, and whether that ultimately ends up in front of voters as a bond initiative.
We wouldn't be in a position to approve any expenditures at this point, but an estimate of an estimate that doesn't cost anybody to get is, you know, that certainly is in order. We
Right,
could do
right.
that. Ms. Hildebrand.
Yeah, I
you
guess
have a
that was my first question, like what our next steps
Right.
with this would be, and you had any idea about, like, when we say long term, like how long term are we talking? I mean, obviously if you're talking about a study and then we have to get
And right approvals
and all
Mrs.
that, like,
King
that's
said
years
I could get this
before
done in a year, no
construction.
problem.
Getting through RIDE to determine the feasibility of the building, housing aid will take you at least 2 years.
Yeah.
They don't commit to you an exact time frame, but that is the relative time frame. So once you're ready to get, you know, rocking and rolling all that, it's going to take you 2 years to get through them. So
But there's a period of time even before that
a long
happens
period of time
of
Yeah,
planning.
yeah. What generally
years for
happens is
approval.
the planning period is several years long, and then from the time that you get the approval to put the shovel in the ground, you're probably looking at, I don't know, another few years to get the work done and to get occupied. So it's a very long time frame on the whole process. I think that that's part of the reason why it's such a difficult conversation to have, because you all are 4-year terms, but you've got a town council that's 2-year terms. So by the time you get some new people in for 1 year, they don't know what they don't know, and then it's ready, either they're moving on or they're being moved on. So it's a very difficult conversation to have, a long-term planning vision, something that Dr. Ajay and I have always lamented when it comes to our buildings. But we need to do something. We need to find a town council that is willing to get that conversation started, and even make commitments, you know, for the future of the town. Otherwise, we're going to be talking, you know, people behind us will be talking about this forever.
And we're talking long-term enough that the children that'll get the most benefit out of this haven't been born yet.
Right.
Right.
That's
You're-
right.
You're literally talking.
Well, and then I'm thinking, I mean, from here until occupancy, there's interim stuff that's gonna have to happen, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, we know that Whitford Middle is gonna need some work, like, you were saying that the roof on the high school needs to be replaced, right? Like, we're talking 10 years,
Well,
it
I
has to be
mean,
replaced
if
within the
we
next
know
4
something like this is coming up, I think we
You
can
wait on
do it in
something.
10 years, you know. But if we know early on that this is just not going to happen, then we have to figure out, all right, well, how are we getting these roofs done, and how, you know,
Yeah.
and how are we addressing any of these needs, particularly at Wickford Middle. I mean, it's a great school, and it is a beautiful school, but it's old, and it really needs a lot of attention one way or another. This goes back just before I became superintendent 8 years ago. My first year as superintendent, there was a bond that passed for $6.4 million, and that was the one that got the roof onto Davisville Middle. That started as a $50 million plus idea that was a major reworking of Wickford Middle to put offices in the front of the school. You have to go through half of the school to get to the main office at Wickford. So it included, you know, security and office space right in that front area and a lot of improvements. But because the economy had tanked at that point, and the legislature and the governor at that point had said, we're only going to fund those absolutely necessary items for ADA compliance and safety issues. So that's why it got whittled down to a $6.4 million bond that year.
And you know, the concern is just that, you know, of course, we all understand the finances, but the concern is that the buildings that remain will be forgotten. So, you know, one of Dr. Ajay's goals is to have people understand that those buildings need capital improvements also, because there's been such a backlog of it. So, you know, a new school is great, but our remaining buildings need capital monies as well.
And just to rewind a tiny bit on part of this discussion, a very conscious decision was made we did recently have a vote on the bond, and the idea was that we were doing this in basically sort of a two-stage plan. We put everything that we needed to get done for rehab of buildings, with the exception of buildings like Forest Park and buildings like Wickford Middle School, because we are not going to put repairs into a building that we have another plan for. So they were very specifically left out of that prior bond, with the idea that we wanted to come up with not a short-term bandage solution, but a true, all-encompassing project. And that's, this is, like we said, we have to start somewhere. Dr. Ogier's presentation is the beginning of that conversation. So, there's always commentary about bonding, and people will ask, well, didn't we just have a school bond? And the answer is yes. But remember that, as we just went through, our new high school, everyone talked about the new high school. The new high school is 18 years old. And that was a 20-year bond. And we are reaching the point where that bond is going to be paid off. And just as when you get to the point in your car that your car is paid off in full and it's starting to fall apart around you, there's a time when well, that car payment went away, it was nice, but we need to now get something new. And we haven't built a school in North Kingstown in 18 years, and we've got one that's 87 years old. So we need to do something, and this is the start of that.
So the estimate of the study, would the study look at more than just the construction? So there's a lot of changes in here, right? Like they're refiguring the ages in the schools and things like that. It would look at all of that, because
Yes.
I'm also thinking about like some unintended consequences, right? Like there could be some things that happen because of some of these decisions that get made that are not intended, but like could.
So with the middle school piece, we've already asked, and we've had a study presented to us about, can a building of that size be put at the Wickford property? And the
Yeah.
answer is yes. But there are a number of other pieces. What would be the best way to expand the preschool, for instance? What would be the best decision for the office spaces? We're very happy with the current configuration we have now, but it will be nice to take advantage of this building project, particularly if we can get some state aid around it to, set us up for the long term. So is that better done as at Fishing Cove? Is it better done as an extension onto the middle school? Is it better done by repurposing Forest Park? So I'd love to hear what an architect would tell us in terms of, what's your best option there. So there are lots of those kinds of questions that I'm sure we'll all have.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking beyond architecture, the 7th and 8th graders without the 6th graders in middle school, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there research? And I did some looking online, right? Like, and I know there's all kinds of different configurations, but
Yes.
being the parent of a 5th grader going into 6th grade, I very much know that she is ready to go into middle school
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And so you're adding on an extra year of that, and what could be the consequences of that with their growth and development? The busing of the middle schoolers and high schoolers together, some concerns about that and how that would work, and whether that's developmentally appropriate as well. And then the other thing that I have, and again, it's sort of like one of those weird things, but I moved into North Kingstown because the district that we were in had these massive elementary schools. And we were looking for a community that had small neighborhood-style schools, like we have in NK. And if you're talking about putting 680 elementary schoolers in Davisville, you lose that.
Right.
And then you have this big elementary school and a couple of other smaller elementary schools. And what's the trade-off with that?
Yeah, yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about beyond like the architecture. Thinking about the students.
Those are all excellent questions, and those are things that I'm sure a lot of people around the community are going to weigh in on, particularly people if you're in the Forest Park neighborhood and you may have moved there because you love the fact that elementary school is right down the street. Now, the chances that your kids are still of age at the time this happens.
It would be my children,
right?
but
Yeah,
yeah,
it'd be someone
people,
else's,
yeah.
but still, that's a good point, and I would expect that a number of people would vote against this for that very reason. But I still think we have an obligation to ask the question. You know, with modernizing, with efficiencies, with long-term sustainability in mind, this is a responsible way to go forward. And then, if it's to the appetite of the voters, we'll pursue it. If they tell us no, we have to go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, what was the reason why? And, you know, now, for less money, I can put this much into Forest Park and fix it up. I can put more into Fishing Cove and fix it up. I can put more into Wickford Middle, and that's going to add up. But maybe it comes to a bond that's less expensive, more palatable to voters, and everyone keeps their local elementary school. But you lose a lot in that too. So,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
I think that there are lots of things for us to think about and try and figure out what's the best.
right.
And this is step one of a discussion
Yeah.
amongst us and amongst members of the public in general. So
Mhm.
for anyone who thinks that this means this is what's gonna happen, I don't know what's gonna happen. It won't be exactly that, I virtually guarantee you. It's a matter of, you know, how that all works out. Still a lot to do.
Yeah, but I guess I say this, there's also not an infinite amount of solutions, right?
Mhm.
So, we started with one, right, which was the newer and fewer to one middle school, 2 closures of elementary schools, and we pretty much realized that's not feasible. So, at a certain point you go, we're not gonna build 8 new buildings, that's not feasible. We're not gonna change the high school that much. Some of the things to the buildings we're keeping, the security vessels, the parking lot, and, I mean, we could ask for those separate too. I mean, those, and we can phase them in over
Yeah.
time. I mean, but those are pretty cut and dry, it's just a matter of the cost to me. And the decision of how much security does the community want or not on that. I think the real issue is simply, at some point you go, do you want to keep all your schools, and at some point run the very, very probable risk that you're gonna have to put 8 figures into Wickford Middle, because it's got, well, I don't want to talk about what it's got, but it's got problems that hitting 90 and 100 years old can't be overcome. And you sit there and it's like the point Dr. Auger made. Do you want to put $10 to $20 million to keep one of 2 elementary schools that are increasingly going to be at 75% capacity, or do you want to do something different? And I think that's just the fundamental question we need to answer and have the town council answer. And once you know that answer, well, then you can talk about everything else that follows from that. I mean, you do certainly raise some good points. You know, would I worry 7 through 12? Yeah, of course, but then again, you know, do you also probably solve the school start time without 500 or 800,000 extra dollars? And so how do you sort of balance those kind of concerns? So again, I think it's, well, we think it's 10 years out. To me, it's really not. It's really not that long, because most of what the superintendent said are cut and dry stuff. We just have to decide if we want it or not. We, the collective community, that. And then, do we want newer and fewer or maintain the same? And once you answer that question, the rest of the pieces fall together. So I would say, you know, start with that answer, hopefully within a year. Once you know that, you know, I don't think it's 10 years, honestly.
It's worth noting that 3 of the newest school projects in the state, East Greenwich at the middle school, Barrington at the middle school, and this one that was just approved at East Providence, those 3 schools were all decades younger than Wickford Middle School.
Yeah.
Coles.
Decades.
Right.
East Providence High School is 67 years old. They're 61, 67, we just saw that.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to think about too is, if you're sitting out there and go, I voted for the $250 million school bond, good for you, but you were somewhat sold, maybe not sold, but what you were told, it's not as if there's a portion, equal share portion that's waiting for North Kingstown to spend at some point. It is 5 years, if you're in the queue, you get the money. If you're not, you don't. The first, 100 million has been spent. Providence and East Providence have gotten 70% of that money. 2 districts have gotten 70% of the money. The districts that don't move will get little to nothing. So the point is going, there's not some share of 150 million that's just waiting for us whenever we decide to act. It is, if we don't act, that's another pool of money that goes away. And frankly, I would say maybe in 3 or 4 years, there could be another moratorium on school construction. Because there'll be no appetite for everything else the state seems to want to do. And so my point is, again, is the time was probably a couple years ago, but having said that, we need not later, but sooner to make the fundamental decision. You know, there's 3 big things to me: the new middle school, the reconfiguration of the elementary schools, and then the others, the security stuff, and the roofs, which we know we have to do anyways. So once you figure out, especially the first 2, everything follows. And we should be really making it a goal with the town council to decide that within the next year. You know, get the cost estimates, make the philosophical decision, and then just go forward, one way or the other.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Dr. Ajay.
Pleasure.
Excellent presentation. Okay, so moving on with the agenda. For routine items, I need a motion to seal the executive session minutes of June 11, 2019.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins, second Mr. Rutledge Jones. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session. Any exemptions from the consent agenda? I'm going to exempt C1 and also E7. Any others? Then, hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins, second Mr. Jones. And just a brief discussion on this. There's a lot of stuff here. We're at the time of the year where we're lining up summer projects, you know, so we've got a whole lot of things that we need to approve to get those things done over the summer, because summer is the primary work time. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. For C1, I'm going to make a motion to approve item C1 with the amendment that I passed around earlier. So I made the motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second. So all those in favor of approving item C1 as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. With item E7, I was just given a change, so I'm going to make a motion to approve item E7 with the removal of Catherine Gardner, math teacher, and the addition of Jordan Albanese, math teacher. It's just a change to that item. So can I have a second, please?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the springboard before and after school programming. That's item F. If I could have a motion to approve that item.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve item F from Ms. Hoskins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Jones. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask the superintendent for both items F and G.
Just a brief, yep.
Yeah.
So,
explanation.
so the springboard is a new model in North Kingstown. This is organized by a person who had been the superintendent of the Seattle, Washington School Department, and has really turned this into a business program for him. He's based in Massachusetts now, and a number of districts in Rhode Island are picking this up. We did a survey of parents at Hamilton if there's an interest in having some before and after school care for kids. They claim anyway, and I believe them, that they work to align programming that they have with our school curriculum, and provide, meaningful things for our kids to do with supervision. But it is not a school department function, similar to G, which is the YMCA. And we already have the YMCA model in Fishing Cove and at Forest Park. G adds that to Stony Lane. They had approached us about that earlier. So, and we've heard from parents in the community that they like that program and want to see it expanded. So we're trying both of these and to see how it goes. As I mentioned, I talked to the superintendent in Barrington, and he said that parents there are really like the Springboard program. They're expanding also into a few other districts in Rhode Island, and KP, one of them with your vote tonight. So I see it as an option. Again, this is not a school department option. You're not going to be calling your principal about this. This will be handled separately, but it does provide parents with, if they need that kind of childcare, whether it's before school or after school, there are options for them to take advantage of that. It doesn't mean they have to go every day. They can set up their own plan with whether it's the Y or Springboard to set up, they can use your help on certain days, and they charge their own fees and take care of their own insurance and the whole thing. So.
And just to point out, it's not funded by the school department, so it's no cost to the school department. In fact, there's revenue from the rental.
It's just like renting out the building to the rec department.
We're just approving the use.
I saw revenue for the YMCA one, but I didn't see it for Springboard. Is it
It's
the
Same thing,
Okay.
6,000 each,
Okay.
which is currently what the Y is paying for Forest Park and Fishing Cove. So it might seem like it's a little more for Stony Lane, but that $6,000 for Forest Park and Fishing Cove has been for a really long time.
And the Springboard one has language around Hamilton providing documentation for licensing, but will they get licensed?
Yeah,
with
so
DCYF?
what will the next steps will be, so first of all, that agreement, that template that you have needs legal review. Our lawyer hasn't had an opportunity to review that yet, so that agreement might change in the wording, but not in the, the dollars and the intent. Their next steps would they have DCYF come in, just like the YMCA does, and they do a building walkthrough, and they'll ask a bunch of questions, and that's how they have to get their licensing. But that, that'll be, the only thing we'll do is our facilities supervisor will walk them around, but clearly if there are any facility upgrades that are needed for anything, we would probably tell them they would have to pay for that, or we would not be able to move forward.
And is the intent for this to start in September?
Yes.
Okay.
You're right. It's very tight. It's very tight for both of them. The Y probably has a better opportunity because they've been looking at Stony Lane for quite some time, and internally they needed to get some decisions made. But you're very right about that. It's a very tight time frame, really tight.
But again, remember, it's not a district program, so it's,
Right.
We're simply providing an approval for them to use buildings.
Yeah,
so
I
it's
think
not
the
to
parents
get-
are thinking.
Yeah,
it's
well,
September.
You're right about
but
that.
that's not us, that's
I
them.
know.
Yep, you're right.
But it still doesn't.
Well, okay.
Things always turn into us, don't they?
So we have a motion and a second, right, Ms. Healy? Sorry, I lost track in our discussion.
Yes.
We do, thank you, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, if I could have a motion to approve item G.
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Jones. Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion or a brief presentation on that? or- yeah.
The same
It's pretty
same
much-
concept. The Y we already have in the district. As I mentioned, Fishing Cove and Forest Park already have the program, so we're very comfortable with that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We did item H already. Item I. So we're not going to make any decisions on this tonight. It's on here just sort of to start a conversation. So I've been working with Dr. Auger and the QDC, the Quantum Development Corporation, on getting options for what we do with the lease. This lease is coming up on the end of its first term, and we've reached out with the town council just to see where they are with respect to, we've had a number of discussions with them over the years about the potential of doing combined space and things like that. There isn't anything at this point that is going to be available by the time this lease expires, so there's clearly going to have to be a renewal. We're working with the QDC on having different options as to length and term and things like that. As with any commercial lease, essentially the longer you tell them you're gonna stay, the cheaper it is, the more options you want, the more expensive it is. So what we're looking on negotiating is a compromise that will allow us to remain here for a reasonable amount of this, or the administration to remain here for a reasonable amount of time, but yet provide options for another option, whether it be something through our long-term plan, or if anything else comes up that is an option. And we're also looking not just at the renewal of this lease, but also what other options might be available, other space in town, but it's not looking like there's a whole lot that's competitive with what we have here at the moment. So
What's the length of the current lease that's expiring?
5 years, and so there's 1 more year from March. We've been here for 4. And the requirement by the landlord is notification by October 1st on future options.
So, we have time to look at it and everything, but we do want to, make a decision in the near future. And it does sort of go in with, with a long-term plan. Some of those options would provide for permanent solutions so that the administration has a home that's not in this building. But we don't have anything at this moment that, we could move into right now. So that is that item.
Well, I
Yep,
think
other
it's important to
comments?
know, it's coming up on 4 years. I know it was the intent of prior school committees, when this lease was first signed, to be co-located with the town government, municipal offices. And it was never the intent, really, at least by the prior school committee that approved this, to be here for a second go-around. So, I know some people talked about this and moving here and all this. It's clearly been the consensus to be co-located with municipal folks. So part of what's driving the need for an extension is just that larger question hasn't been answered, and I'm guessing from what we've gotten in terms of preliminary communications is there's really not an intent on the municipal side to ever have a single government center. So to me, it only heightens the fact that we're going to have to do this or find something else. And just again, the point of another decision sooner or later, tell us that we're never gonna have a single government town school thing, so we can, move forward with that element of it.
And you reminded me of something I meant to say, which is that we did have a vote. School committees change, people come and go, so it's not the people that were
Right,
sitting here,
right.
but the school committee did formally vote to say to the town that yes, we are amenable to doing a joint administrative
We
office
formed a
building.
committee.
It was a
And
committee,
we
Dr.
formed a
Fallon and I were
committee.
heavily involved.
And in my opinion, that has not changed. If an option comes together, I'm still open to that. We can revisit it in the future if we want to vote and say, oh, we don't want to do that anymore. Moving forward like this is simply that there aren't any options that have come up to do that. So, I'm still open to that personally, and if there's a solution is part of what the town is looking at with their own issues with their office space comes together that says, well, we can all get together, have the consolidation that we've talked about. I'm completely open to doing that, and the school committee has a formal vote that says that we are as well. But I don't see that right now, so. Okay, unfinished business, 2018-2019 school budget.
I'm happy to report that the FY19 audit for the school department began today. Our new auditors came in
Right.
to do, is that super or what?
And it's still FY19?
Yes, to do some preliminary work because we do have new auditors, so they need to do a lot of internal control testing and whatnot. So it was good to meet them. We had a conference call with them a couple of weeks ago, and they came in today, and they're going to get started so that we can have draft financials for the school department before budget time.
Okay,
So that's the goal.
great. And 2019-20 school budget.
Nothing.
Okay, CIP bond and future bond, we have before you item C1, which is the school committee approval of the RIDE technical assistance funds. I'll ask for a motion to approve that, and then I'll hand it over to Mrs. King to explain what it is exactly that we're approving. So if I could have a motion to approve item, I just lost it, C1.
Renee?
Second.
Thanks for coming. I have a motion and a second, so it was Ms. Hoskins and second Ms. Hildebrand?
Yep.
Okay, Mrs. King?
So this document in front of you are technical assistance funds, and the technical assistance is for an educational facility master plan. So that document or that plan is now required as part of the 5-year asset protection plan that the North Kingstown School Department just had ours approved in May of 2018. So the next time we need to do a 5-year asset protection plan, which I'm sorry to say is coming upon 4 years now, we're gonna have to do it again. This very detailed educational facility master plan is required. It would be required as part of a new school review. It would just be required, period, of the district. In-depth enrollment, demographic analysis, projections, all of that. I understand that South Kingstown had one done a year or so ago, and the format of that is being used largely as the model for what is required for these educational facility master plans. So RIDE has offered, based on the information that we did provide in our current 5-year asset protection plan on the future outlook of how we would like to have a new school and we would like to look for newer and fewer. They provided us the opportunity to have this $150,000 in assistance. Expires December 31st, 2020. I can't even tell you how much one of these plans costs. I can't even give you any names of people that do this kind of thing. It's something that would have to be bid. I know that we had Dr. Auger and I had a very brief conversation with a consultant that our architect was using for a very preliminary educational facility master plan, maybe a year and a half or so ago. But this is very, very detailed. There'll be meetings with principals, there'll be meetings with the community. It's a very detailed plan that needs to be presented as part of your asset protection for all of the school liabilities. So I don't see a downside in agreeing to this. We certainly are not committed to doing anything, and when I come back before you in 6 to 8 months on information regarding an RFP or information regarding a consultant, RIDE is looking to pre-qualify some consultants that could do this work. Maybe we'll go that route, but whatever that is, there's no downside here. We're not committed to anything. We do it, we get the funds. We don't do it, we're going to have to figure it out before we do a 5-year asset protection plan anyway. So I think it's a good idea for us just to accept this and put it in our back pocket when we do the plan.
So what are we agreeing to?
Agreeing
$150 of technical assistance.
that we will take that money if we do the,
If we do the plan.
So,
If we do the plan, we get the
correct,
money.
by December 31st, 2020.
But the plan could cost more.
And
will
it probably
cost
will.
But we're probably gonna have to do
but
it
we
anyway.
have to do it anyway eventually.
Right.
So the idea is, that there are a whole series of types of plans and work that needs to be done by the school department and submitted to RIDE on a regular basis. This falls under that. There's often no assistance whatsoever. It's generally you have to do this really expensive work and you gotta pay for it. Here, we're at least being given the opportunity to take $150,000 in state funds to put towards our plan that we're gonna end up having to do anyway. So the idea is we might as well do it while we can and have some portion of it. And we're not committing to doing anything right now. We're just agreeing that we'll take the money. If we do it, we'll use it for that. Did I sum it up?
That's absolutely right. That's
And
absolutely right.
this plan could feed into the other
Yeah, so
planning?
you would have to do a detailed plan like this for a new school.
Okay.
So if you do it as an overall, and you have to do it anyway, but if you do it as an
You kind of use
overall
it twice.
plan exactly of the whole district, that information can be incorporated into the plans for a new school.
Okay. I think I get it.
Or the plans could inform this. So
Right. and it-
In
Right.
other words, we get a little bit of a subsidy for doing the plan.
Right.
That we need to do anything.
But so that's, it's just the timing of it, right?
Correct.
This
Exactly.
has
The
a
timing,
deadline,
That's correct. The other one
or
doesn't necessarily
Maybe
have the
it
same
does
deadline.
if.
Well,
we
and the
both-
5-year plan does, I mean, we
Yeah.
are gonna have to get that done, and, we're gonna start doing that again in 3 years. So really, when you think about it, the way our schools operate now, this plan is going to inform the future direction of that, and that's not gonna dramatically change, so that, you know, if we do this plan a year ahead of time, it's not like we're gonna be scrapping the whole thing. Basically, they're telling you how to operate educationally in the 21st century, which is difficult with the buildings that we have, but those are the kind of recommendations that they make based on your future outlook for your projections and enrollment and demographic.
So we have a plan right now.
We don't have an educational
We don't.
master facility plan, but we have a 5-year asset protection plan that we just completed. That took us a year and a half to get done. So it's a 5-year plan that takes a year and a half
So
to
by the
complete.
time you're done.
Start again.
Yeah, and that plan itself cost $150,000 for us to have completed, and that did not incorporate this very in-depth educational plan that is now required. It was just very
So
peripheral.
this is a new requirement. Okay.
As of June 30th, 2018, so we were very lucky we just missed that.
Got it?
Yep.
All right. Any other discussion? Then we have I gotta start writing this down, I'm sorry. We had a motion in a second, right? Thank you. Because I've done it once I went too fast and we didn't have one, so sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is item D, which is the second reading of approval for policy GCID.1. If I could have a motion to approve the second read of policy, which would be the approval of policy D1.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Ms. Hoskins, second Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion?
I think the only issue we have the district to start to deal with a little bit is some of our employee expenses are getting higher amounts, and I think it's things like the conferences or this competitions and stuff that, and the problem's always is you can't get them to give you a timely invoice or a purchase order, so we're getting more
Or
of these.
reimbursed?
Well, more of these where the reimbursements are large and it's really no fault because ultimately someone's got to put up a credit card to guarantee it. And I just think I don't have a solution off the top of my head.
So,
Short of a district which
I was going to say, the
do.
point being, which is an important
Keep
point.
asking for that
There
district credit
is
card, Mrs.
not-
King will not allow me to do that.
It's an important note. There is not a district credit card. So what you're looking at is, so if someone is going to be making an expenditure that is for a conference, for example, and they have to book their travel for that. And we're talking about things that are completely approved and fully reimbursable. It's all legit. But there's not a number that Mrs. King says, oh, charge it to here. We do not do that. And some other districts, in case you don't recall, have had some issues with those types of credit cards. We do not have them.
And we do have some accounts, like with Dave's or Home Depot, but those are not credit cards that you can just use anywhere.
And I think the related issue though is always the balance of we should be getting the tax-free as an educational institution,
For
nonprofit.
taxable items.
But when a person's got to put it on their own credit card,
Yeah.
they end up paying the tax. So again, it's not that there's a solution thing. I think this
Right.
policy's fine for what it's designed to do. I just think that's an issue we have to start thinking about though, as these things get more common and bigger.
So even administration, if you guys are going to conferences, you're
No,
putting
we
it
do
all
not have
in
credit
your-
cards, that's all personal.
And it's all reviewed, and even, just for example, a separate policy, but Dr. O'Shea's expenses are reviewed annually
Yeah.
by the school committee and
And even ours, which is
which are
zero.
zero.
But if we did,
If we had
if we did.
reimbursable expenses. Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. In your packet, I would like you to just briefly mention the school committee update for the purchasing contracts.
Yes, so I
Sure,
just
that's
wanted to
some-
give you the final pricing on the electricity purchasing contract. It actually came in lower than what you guys had approved, which is phenomenal. But the reason why there's an update is because there is a refresh period. So in the time frame that I got the information from the company and you guys approved it, there needed to be a refresh. But we did end up with an even lower rate. It's a terrific rate, and it'll start in about mid-December when our current contract expires.
Yeah, I think we should commend the administration. That's a really good rate considering the uncertainty in 3 years, right?
3 years.
6, so that's a great
Yeah,
rate.
and it's really, it's very interesting the way the whole auction works. different than what we could ever do on our own. You know, we submit RFPs, but this is all a live auction format, and they can go back and tell people, you know, we want your best and final. It's really quite a business. It's very interesting.
And then we have disposal notifications, enrollment, and financial reports. Any questions on those?
Yes,
Yes.
one question.
Mr. Jones?
So, not to plug a company, but we really got 51 years out of a John Deere tractor?
We
God.
did.
Nothing runs.
And do you know that I recall, we did, and I recall having a
Fully
disagreement with
depreciated.
a former school committee member who said, well, those things will last forever. And I said, yeah, if you're using them twice a year in your backyard. But when you're using them as part of your big maintenance operation for grounds upkeep. So, yeah, we keep things for a long time
51
around
years,
here.
That was a pretty good return on
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
investment by that.
Wickford Middle School was 46 years old when we bought it, though. So,
The guys they do really maintain stuff very well.
All right, then we have, the 1968 John Deere tractor. So it has reached the end of its useful life. So we have reached the end of the agenda. I would ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins. Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Thank you all very much.
thank you, everybody. Thank you, Travis.
Can I get you guys to sign this?
Yes.
Technical